The Hargrove Gala had a dress code. Evenly Morrow had not been told what it was. She found out the same way she found out most things. Too late, standing in the wrong place, wearing the wrong thing, while someone better dressed pointed it out loud enough for the whole room to hear. Is that a bridesmaid dress from 2019? Her stepsister, Camilla's voice carried the way expensive perfume does. Effortlessly, in every direction at once. Evenly, it's velvet in June. The laughter was polite. The kind of laughter people use when they don't want to seem cruel but don't want to miss out either. 43 people, Evenly had counted, standing in the foyer of the Château Rivard with champagne flutes, black ties, and borrowed smiles. Evenly did not look down at her dress. That was the one thing she'd learned in 29 years of being the wrong kind of person in the right kind of room. You didn't look down. Looking down was an admission. She kept her eyes level and said nothing, which Camilla had always found more unsettling than any comeback. She's just being sensitive, Camilla told the group, turning back to them like Evenly had already been dismissed. She does this at every family event, shows up like she's doing us a favor. Evenly was there because her father had asked her to come. Not Camilla's father, their father. Douglas Morrow, who owed $312,000 to a man whose name Evenly had only ever heard whispered, and whose representative was supposed to be in this room tonight to discuss repayment terms. Douglas Morrow, who had called Evenly at 6 in the morning and said, "I need you here because you understand numbers, Ev. You always understood the numbers." She hadn't wanted to come. She'd taken a bus from her apartment in Verdun and changed in the bathroom of a brasserie 2 blocks from the chateau, because there was no way she was showing up on the metro in a formal dress. The velvet, for the record, was navy blue, and she'd paid $42 for it at a consignment shop in Pointe St. Charles. It was not from 2019, it was from 2017, which was worse, but nobody needed to know that. She found a corner near the east window where the lighting was dim and the waitstaff didn't make eye contact, and she could see both exits. Old habit. The kind of habit you develop when rooms like this have never been safe. The gala was technically a charity event. The Rivard Foundation, something to do with youth literacy, the kind of cause that looks good on a tax return. But Evenly had reviewed the foundation's publicly available filings 2 nights ago out of habit, and the numbers had a smell to them. Not wrong, exactly. Just arranged too carefully. The kind of careful that takes effort. She was studying the room, calculating exit distances with the part of her brain that never fully clocked off when she first noticed him, not because he was handsome. He was, in the way that men who've survived things tend to be, worn down to the essential nothing soft left. But that wasn't what made her notice him. It was the way the room moved around him. Not toward him the way people move toward someone charismatic. Around him, the way water moves around something fixed in the current. Like every person in that foyer had a small, unconscious awareness of where he was and had silently chosen a path that didn't cross his. He was standing near the bar, not drinking, in a dark charcoal suit that was not rented. He was talking to no one. His eyes moved through the room in the same methodical exit-noting way that hers did, and when they landed on her, they stopped. Evenly looked away first. That was another thing she'd learned. Don't hold eye contact with men who look at you like that, like they're reading something. She checked her phone. Her father had texted, "Rosetti running late. Don't leave," which told her nothing useful except that the man she was waiting for had a name that ended in a vowel and was already making them wait, which was its own kind of message. Camilla materialized at her elbow with the precision of someone who'd been watching for a weak moment. "Dad says you're here for business." She said business the way she said most things Evenly did, like it was slightly ridiculous, like it was something Evenly was pretending at. "What business?" "You keep books for a dry cleaner." 3 dry cleaners, Evenly said, "and a restaurant and a property management firm." She kept her voice flat. "And I'm a licensed CPA. Nobody cares about licensed." Camilla took a sip of her champagne. Her dress was emerald, fitted, clearly expensive. Her jewelry was real. She had the kind of look that rooms like this were designed to hold. God, Evenly. I don't know why you bother coming to these things. You know how people talk. I know exactly how people talk, Evenly said. That's not what's bothering me. What's bothering you? Dad owes money to someone who hurts people, Camilla. That's what's bothering me. Camilla's expression tightened, not with concern, with irritation at having the pleasant fiction punctured. He doesn't owe money to. 312,000, Evenly said, plus interest, which I suspect is not the kind you can negotiate down, so. She turned and looked at her stepsister directly. Maybe let me do what I came to do. Camilla opened her mouth, closed it, then laughed. That same bright, effortless laugh she'd been deploying since they were teenagers, the one that was designed to make Evenly feel like she'd said something naive. You're so dramatic. She drifted back toward the crowd. Enjoy your corner. Evenly went back to watching the room. The man in the charcoal suit was no longer at the bar. She registered his absence with the same low-level alertness she'd have registered a sound stopping. Her eyes did a quick sweep. There, by the hallway leading to the private rooms. He'd moved without her noticing, which meant he'd moved deliberately, which meant he was better at this than most people in the room. He was looking at her again, and then he was walking toward her. Not drifting, not ambling in her general direction the way men sometimes do at events like this, all plausible deniability. Walking, direct, unhurried, with the quiet authority of someone who has never had to wonder whether they'd be allowed to arrive where they were going, Evenly made herself stay still. The window was at her back. She did the math. He was roughly 6'2", at least 90 kilos, and the nearest exit was 11 meters to her left. None of that was helpful information. She filed it anyway. He stopped 2 feet away. Not close enough to crowd her, close enough to speak quietly. You've been calculating exit distances since you walked in, he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was low, not deep exactly, but with a steadiness to it. The kind of steadiness that comes from never needing to raise it. Old habit, or current threat assessment. Evenly looked at him. Up close, the wear was more visible. A faint scar along his jaw, the kind that healed long ago but left its mark, and something behind his eyes that was not tiredness exactly, but something adjacent to it, the particular exhaustion of men who have been making decisions with consequences for a very long time. Who are you? She said. Rosetti. He said it the way people say their last name when their first name is something they don't offer casually. Like a door that stays closed. And you're Douglas Morrow's daughter. One of them, she said. Something in his expression shifted. Not a smile, nothing that obvious. Just a very slight recalibration. The one who keeps the books? The one who is a CPA, she said. There's a difference. There is, he agreed. He looked at her for a moment in a way that was not rude but was very direct. The kind of looking that people with something to lose don't generally do. Your father was supposed to meet me 20 minutes ago. He's in the East Parlor pretending to have a phone call he doesn't have. I've given him enough time to stop pretending. He paused. Are you actually useful with numbers, or is that what he told me to get me here? Evenly felt something cold and precise click into place in her chest. She'd known her father was using her as a reason. She hadn't quite known he was using her as a bargaining chip. Tell me what you need, she said. Not here. He didn't wait for her to agree. He simply turned and walked toward the hallway, and after 1 second, one beat in which Evenly reminded herself that she could still leave, that the exit was 11 meters away, that her bus pass was in her bag, and her apartment in Verdun was quiet and safe and smelled like instant coffee, she followed him. The East Parlor was wood-paneled and overheated and smelled like old money, which smelled, specifically, like cedar and stale scotch. Douglas Morrow was standing near the fireplace, not on a phone call. He startled when they walked in, and Evenly watched his face go through several expressions in rapid succession, relief at seeing her, guilt at her seeing him, and something like hope, the thin, dangerous kind, when he looked at Rosetti. Luca, he said. Mr. Morrow. Rosetti's voice had not changed. It didn't warm and it didn't cool. Your daughter tells me she's useful. She is, Douglas said quickly. She's the best I know with. I didn't ask for a reference. Rosetti moved to the small writing desk in the corner, opened the leather briefcase that had been sitting there, and placed a manila folder on the desk. I asked for someone who can read this and tell me what they see. He looked at Evenly. She crossed the room and opened the folder. The documents inside were financial records. 3 years of them, from what appeared to be a holding company based in Montreal. The formatting was standard, the categories familiar. She began to read, and the part of her brain that had been quietly restless since she walked in tonight, the part that liked order and pattern and the clean language of numbers, finally had something to do. It took her 8 minutes. She didn't time it, but Rosetti did. She saw him check his watch once, then stop checking it. "Someone's been skimming," she said. "Not a lot at once. That's deliberate. Small enough to miss if you're doing a cursory read. But it's consistent. And if you look at the quarterly averages..." She turned 2 pages and put them side by side on the desk. "The variance here and here doesn't match the reported operating costs. Whoever's doing it knows enough not to touch the top-line numbers. They're adjusting the mid-tier allocations. It's clean work." Whoever taught them was good. The room was quiet. She looked up. Rosetti was watching her with the same reading expression he'd had in the foyer, but there was something different in it now, sharper. Like he'd expected a slightly less precise answer, and was adjusting for the discrepancy. "How much?" he said. "I'd need the subsidiary records to give you an exact figure. Based on what's here," she glanced at the pages again, "somewhere between 40 and 60,000 a year over 3 years. Possibly more if there are accounts not in this folder." "There are," he said. "Then possibly more." Douglas cleared his throat. "So you see, she's exactly what I said. Mr. Morrow." Rosetti's tone didn't change, but Douglas stopped talking immediately, with the reflexive obedience of a man who has learned that interruption has costs. "I'll need someone to go through the full records, all of them. It will take time, and it won't be comfortable work." He looked at Evenly. "Are you available?" "I have other clients," she said. "I'll compensate you for the hours you redirect." He named a figure that was more per hour than Evenly made in a week. He said it the way he said everything else, without emphasis, like it was simply the accurate number. Evenly looked at him for a moment. He was still standing near the desk, one hand resting on the surface, watching her with that same patient, calculating attention. There was something almost incongruous about it. This man, in this room, with the particular gravity that preceded him through doorways, and he was asking her, not telling, not using her father's debt to force the question into a shape that wasn't really a question, asking. She thought about her apartment in Verdun. She thought about the 3 dry cleaners and the restaurant, and the 12 years she'd spent building a practice client by client, because no firm had ever hired her out of school, because she'd gone to Concordia on a scholarship, and worked nights and lived on lentils and taken the bus, because there had never been a room that opened the door for her, not once, not ever. She thought about the fact that her father owed $312,000 and was currently standing near the fireplace, trying to look like a man who had the situation under control. "I'll need the full 3 years," she said, "and any subsidiary documentation going back 5, and I want it understood clearly that I report what I find. All of it, regardless of where it points." Something shifted in Rosetti's expression, not surprise. Something quieter than surprise. "Agreed," he said. "And my father's debt," evenly Douglas started. "Is not your concern," Rosetti said, and she couldn't tell, for a moment, whether he was answering her or cutting her father off. "The arrangement with Mr. Morrow is separate." "I know it's separate," she said. "I'm asking whether my work here is going to affect it." He looked at her for a long moment. The fireplace crackled. Somewhere distantly, through the walls, the gala continued. Glasses, voices, the professional hum of charity. "If your work is as good as what I just watched," Rosetti said, "then yes, it's going to affect it." It wasn't a promise. It was a sentence arranged with the precision of someone who knows exactly which words to leave out. Evenly closed the folder. "I'll need a secure workspace," she said. "Not here. Somewhere without the event noise. And coffee. Actual coffee. Not what they're serving in the foyer, which is catastrophically weak." For the first time since he'd walked across the ballroom toward her, Rosetti looked like he might, under different circumstances, know how to smile. It didn't quite happen. But it was close. "I'll arrange it," he said. She nodded once, tucked the folder under her arm, and turned toward the door. She had her hand on the frame when she heard Camilla's voice in the hallway, bright, carrying, doing what it always did. "Honestly, I don't know why Dad insists on bringing her to these things. She makes everyone uncomfortable." Evenly stepped into the hallway. Camilla was standing with two women in designer dresses, mid-story, champagne in hand. She stopped when she saw Evenly. Then she saw the folder. Then she saw Rosetti in the doorway behind Evenly, and the story stopped. The two women looked at him the way everyone looked at him, that small, unconscious rearrangement. Camilla's expression did something complicated. "We're heading out," Evenly said, not to Camilla, just to the air between them. "Have a good night." She didn't wait for a response. She started down the hall, folder under her arm, heels on marble, and heard Rosetti's footsteps fall into step behind her. Not rushing, not crowding, just there, steady, like a question being asked in a language that didn't need words. In the car, a black Escalade with tinted windows and a driver who didn't ask questions. Evenly opened the folder again. The reading light came on automatically when she spread the pages on her knee. "You knew something was wrong before tonight," she said, not looking up. "You had these ready." "Yes," Rosetti said from the other seat. "Who do you think it is?" He was quiet for a moment. "I have a name. I want confirmation before I act on it, because you act on it with something other than legal recourse. It wasn't a question." He didn't answer it, which was its own kind of answer. Evenly looked at the numbers. They looked back at her with the clarity they always had. A pattern once you knew where to look, a story once you knew how to read it. Someone had been patient. Someone had been careful. Someone thought they were smarter than the books. People always thought they were smarter than the books. "Third quarter, year 2, she said, tapping a page. "This is where I'd start." She heard him shift in the seat beside her. Not toward her, just a small reorientation, a focusing of attention. "Why there? Because that's where the confidence kicked in," she said. Early on they were cautious, small, irregular. But here, she pointed to a column, they started getting comfortable, started rounding. Comfortable people get sloppy, and sloppy people leave patterns. Another silence, a different kind than the ones before it. "You do this quickly," he said. "I've been doing it since I was 17, she said. "My mother kept bad books. I fixed them. After that I just—" She stopped. That wasn't something she'd meant to say out loud. She looked back at the page. "I'm good with numbers. It's not complicated." "No," Rosetti said. "It isn't." She wasn't sure if he was agreeing about the numbers or about something else. The city moved past the windows. Montreal at 11 p.m., lit and alive, and indifferent to everything happening in the dark interior of a car that wasn't hers. She worked for 3 hours that night at a table in a private office on the 14th floor of a building on McGill College Avenue. The table was long and clean, and someone brought actual coffee, dark, strong, no sugar, without her asking twice. Rosetti sat at the far end of the table with his own documents, working in silence, occasionally asking a question. He asked questions the way he did everything else, precisely, without unnecessary words, waiting for the full answer before moving on. At 1:17 a.m. she found it. "Here," she said. He was at her shoulder in 3 steps, close enough that she could smell cedar and something cooler, like cold air off a window. He looked at where she was pointing. "A shell company," she said, "registered in 2022. The payments started routing through it in the same month as the variance I found in the 3rd quarter. It's not in any of the listed subsidiaries." She spread 2 documents side by side, and the signatory on the registration. She turned the page. "Is a law firm you'll recognize." Rosetti was quiet for a long moment. "Aldous Crane," he said. It wasn't a question. It was the sound of a conclusion arriving on schedule. "That's the firm on the registration, yes. I can't confirm who engaged them without deeper. I can confirm it," he said. His voice had not changed. It was still even, still low, but something beneath it had shifted. The way ice shifts before it cracks, soundless, internal. "This is enough." "It's a paper trail," she said. "It's strong, but if you're planning to do something with it in court—" "I'm not planning to do something with it in court." She looked at him directly. He was standing very close, the documents between them, the city dark behind the window. The particular exhaustion she'd noticed earlier was still there, but something else had replaced the sharpness. Not warmth, nothing as simple as that. Something more like recognition. "You should know," she said carefully, "that what I found is enough for a formal complaint. Revenue Canada, possibly the RCMP, depending on the scope. You don't have to, evenly." It was the first time he'd used her name. She felt it land with a specificity that her full name rarely did. People either mangled it or avoided it, turned it into Evie or Eve because the whole thing was too unusual, too much to bother with. He said it the way he said everything, like he'd considered it first and decided it was the right word. "I know what I have to do," he said. "I'm not asking you to be part of that. I'm already part of it. You're part of the accounting." He held her gaze. "The rest of it isn't your weight to carry." She thought about saying that she understood, that she didn't want to know more, that she was going to take the envelope she assumed was coming, go home to Verdun and forget the name Aldous Crane and the shell company and the third quarter variance that had cracked the whole thing open. She thought about saying that. "My father's debt," she said instead. Rosetti looked at her for a long moment. The documents were between them. All that careful, arranged dishonesty laid out in black and white, all of it speaking the clean language of numbers that she'd always been fluent in, and no one had ever quite valued until tonight. "Your father's debt," he said, "is cleared, in exchange for what I found tonight. In exchange for what you're going to find in the next 2 weeks," he said, "because this," he gestured at the documents, "is one account, there are 11 others, and whoever I send in there after tonight is either going to miss things or take too long or both." He paused. "You found that in 3 hours. I got lucky with the third quarter." "No," he said, "you didn't." She looked at him. "You weren't lucky," he said. "You knew where comfortable people get sloppy. That's not luck. That's pattern recognition built out of something it probably cost you to learn." The room was quiet. The city outside was quiet. Somewhere in the building, an elevator moved. Evenly looked at the documents and then back at him and thought about her mother's bad books and the scholarship and Concordia and 12 years of clients who needed a CPA but didn't particularly want to pay one what she was worth. 11 accounts, she said. 11 accounts. And the rate you named in the parlor. The rate I named in the parlor. She nodded once. Picked up her pen, pulled the next folder toward her. "Then we'd better start," she said. Rosetti moved back to the far end of the table. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. The documents were there, and she was there, and the numbers had a story to tell that she was finally in the right room to hear. At 3 a.m., when she finally sat back and pressed her fingers against her eyes, she heard him set a second cup of coffee on the table beside her. She didn't look up. "Thank you," she said. He didn't answer that either, but when she reached for the cup, his hand was still close to it, not touching hers, not close enough to mean anything if you weren't paying attention. She was always paying attention. She picked up the coffee and went back to work, and the city outside went on being dark, and the numbers went on telling their story, and somewhere across the table, Luca Rosetti sat in silence with the particular quality of a man who has spent a long time waiting for something to happen, and has, without entirely meaning to, just watched it begin.